Imagine if every single word you spoke was like a thread weaving the fabric of your identity. Strange thought, right? But the truth is, the way you communicate is not just about transferring information, it's actually a window into your thoughts, your emotions, your childhood experiences, and even the hidden beliefs buried deep in your subconscious. And here's the fascinating part. The words you choose, the tone you use, and the rhythm of your speech reveal far more about you than you probably realize. In today's video, we're going to dive into this eye-opening idea. By the end, you won't just understand why you speak the way you do, you'll also uncover hidden aspects of yourself that you may have never noticed before. And the final revelation. It's so powerful it could completely change the way you think about communication forever. Language is more than just a tool. It's a fingerprint of your mind, a signature of your experiences, and a mirror reflecting your inner world. From the way you structure your sentences to the words you instinctively lean on, every part of your speech is shaped by something deeper, your psychology, your environment, and even your biology. Think back to the last time you met someone whose way of speaking immediately captivated you. Maybe their voice was calm and soothing, or maybe their words carried an undeniable sense of authority that made you pay attention. Now contrast that with someone whose speech felt scattered, hesitant, or uncertain. What made the difference? Was it simply their choice of words, or was there something deeper at play? Here's the truth: the way we speak is never random. It's influenced by countless factors: our upbringing, the people we spend time with, our culture, and the way our brain processes information. Sigmund Freud believed that speech patterns often reveal subconscious desires and inner conflicts. Meanwhile, modern research in linguistics shows that vocabulary and speaking style can reflect everything from confidence levels to emotional states. Take filler words, for example. You've probably noticed people who often say, or like. That doesn't always mean they're unsure. Sometimes those fillers are just a tool that gives the brain time to process. But when overused, they can signal nervousness or lack of certainty. On the flip side, people who speak with deliberate pauses and a measured pace usually come across as confident, calm, and in control. And then there's word choice. This is perhaps one of the most revealing aspects of speech. Research in psycholinguistics suggests that people who use personal pronouns like I and me are often more introspective and self-aware, while those who lean on words like we and us tend to show stronger social connections and empathy. Which brings us to an important truth: the way you speak doesn't just reveal who you are, it also shapes how others see you. And sometimes it even shapes how you see yourself. Now let's go even deeper. Most of us focus so much on what we say, but the real power often lies in how we say it. Think about tone, for example. Countless studies in communication psychology reveal that tone of voice carries far more meaning than words alone. In fact, Albert Mehrabian, a well-known psychologist, suggested that only 7% of meaning comes from words, while 38% comes from tone, and an incredible 55% comes from body language. That means you could carefully choose every word, but if your tone doesn't align with your intent, your message won't land the way you want it to. Picture this: someone says the phrase, "I'm fine." Simple, right? But if they say it warmly, it feels reassuring. If they say it coldly, it feels distant. If they say it sarcastically, it feels dismissive. Same words, completely different meaning. This is why some people naturally command attention, while others struggle to be taken seriously. The secret isn't just in the message, but in the delivery. Now let's talk about rhythm and pacing. Confident speakers don't rush. They allow each word to land with impact. When we're nervous, we tend to speed up, almost as if we're afraid our thoughts will vanish before we can finish. But this rush often makes us sound anxious or uncertain. On the other hand, when you slow down and speak with control, you project authority, calm, and assurance. Think of some of history's most influential voices, leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. or Barack Obama. Their speeches are remembered not only for their words, but for their deliberate rhythm, the carefully placed pauses, the way their voices rose and fell with intention. Their style gave listeners time to absorb, reflect, and connect. But what about everyday conversations? Research shows that pacing and tone matter here too, sometimes in subtle but powerful ways. One fascinating phenomenon is called linguistic mirroring. This happens when we unconsciously adjust our speech patterns, whether speed, tone, or even vocabulary, to match the person we're talking to. It's a natural mechanism for building trust and connection. You've probably experienced this yourself. Have you ever spent time with someone who has a distinct accent or a unique way of speaking and then noticed yourself picking up bits of their style? That's not coincidence. It's your brain trying to establish familiarity and rapport. This is also why charismatic people are so effective. They naturally tune their communication to align with their audience. They make you feel understood, connected, and engaged not just by what they say, but by how they say it. Let's shift our focus to vocabulary, the very words you choose every day. Your vocabulary is not just a collection of terms. It's a reflection of your background, your education, and even your personality. In fact, linguists call this flexibility code, switching the ability to shift between different styles of speech depending on the situation. Think about it, the way you talk to a close friend is likely filled with casual expressions, slang, and maybe even inside jokes. But when you're in a professional setting, your language probably becomes more structured, precise, and polished. This switch isn't random, it's a learned adaptation. And here's the deeper truth. Each version of your speech represents a different side of who you are. But vocabulary isn't just about adapting to your environment. It also shapes how you think. Research in cognitive science supports the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which suggests that language doesn't simply express thought, it actively influences it. In other words, the words available to you shape the way you perceive reality. Consider emotions. In English, we use relatively simple words like happy, sad, or angry. But in other languages, there are words that capture emotions with stunning precision. For example, the Japanese word sundoku describes the act of collecting books and never reading them. The Portuguese word saudade expresses a deep, nostalgic longing for something that may never return. When a language has a word for an experience, it makes that experience more vivid and more real. This means that by expanding your vocabulary, you don't just sound smarter, you actually expand the way your mind interprets the world. The richer your vocabulary, the more nuanced your thinking becomes. Now let's take this idea further. The words you use daily also reflect and reinforce your mindset. If you constantly use limiting language like I can't, it's impossible, or I'm just not good at this, you're unintentionally programming your brain to accept those limits as truth. Over time, those words carve patterns into your self-image. On the flip side, when you consciously choose empowering language phrases, like I'm learning, I can handle this, or there's always a way, you rewire your thought process toward resilience and possibility. So here's the big question. Have you ever stopped mid-conversation and asked yourself, what does my speech reveal about me? Does it project confidence or hesitation? Does it open doors for connection, or does it create distance? From the moment you were born, your way of speaking has been shaped by invisible forces all around you. Your family, your culture, your environment, even the media you consumed growing up. Every one of these factors has left its imprint on your voice and your communication style. But here's the real question: how much of the way you speak is truly you, and how much is simply an echo of everything you've absorbed? Let's start with upbringing. Studies in sociolinguistics show that our earliest speech patterns are strongly influenced by how our caregivers spoke to us as children. If you grew up in a household filled with rich, expressive language, chances are you developed a stronger vocabulary and sharper communication skills early on. But if you were raised in an environment where expression was restricted or discouraged, you may have unconsciously adopted patterns of hesitation or self-censorship. Think about how children mimic their parents, not just the words, but the tone, the rhythm, even the emotional energy behind certain phrases. If a child frequently hears, "That's impossible," or "You always mess things up," those words can become a script carried into adulthood. On the other hand, a child who grows up hearing, "You can figure it out," or "There's always a way," often develops a more optimistic and confident way of speaking. Beyond, family culture also plays a massive role. Language and culture are deeply intertwined, and each culture has its own unique approach to communication. In many Western societies, speech is often direct and individualistic. People are encouraged to voice opinions openly, and assertiveness is seen as confidence. Meanwhile, in many Eastern cultures, communication tends to be more indirect, with an emphasis on harmony and subtlety. Silence itself can carry as much meaning as words. Think about your own tendencies. Do you usually speak in a straightforward, to-the-point style? Or do you soften your words carefully, choosing phrases to avoid conflict? These habits aren't just personal quirks, they're cultural imprints shaped by years of immersion in a particular way of interacting with the world. Even within the same country, language patterns vary widely. Someone raised in an academic environment surrounded by debates and discussions is likely to speak very differently from someone who grew up in a working-class neighborhood where speech is more direct, fast-paced, and pragmatic. Neither style is better. Both carry the history of where a person comes from and what shaped them. And then there's social conditioning, society's subtle yet powerful expectations of how we should speak depending on factors like gender status or profession. For example, studies have shown that women are often encouraged consciously or unconsciously to use more hedging language phrases like "I think" or "maybe we couldn't," while men are rewarded for being more direct and assertive. These aren't hard rules of biology, they're patterns of culture. So when you think about your own voice, here's something to consider. Is the way you speak a reflection of who you truly are, or a reflection of who the world has trained you to be? Now let's step into the world of modern technology, a force that's reshaping language faster than ever before. Think about how different communication feels today compared to just a few decades ago. Social media texting, voice-to-text, and instant messaging have transformed not only what we say, but how we say it. Have you noticed how the way you type a text message doesn't always match how you'd speak in person? Shorter sentences, abbreviations, even emojis replacing entire emotions. A single thumbs-up emoji can now carry the weight of a full sentence. Over time, these digital shortcuts don't just shape our online conversations, they begin to seep into our natural speech patterns as well. Younger generations in particular are growing up in a world where much of their communication is asynchronous, meaning conversations happen in delayed, fragmented bursts rather than in real-time dialogue. Instead of sitting face-to-face and talking for hours, many interactions are broken into dozens of short exchanges over apps. This shift is quietly influencing attention spans, patience in conversation, and even the way we process spoken language. Think about it. Have you ever felt your ability to stay fully engaged in a long, uninterrupted conversation fading over the years? That's not just you. It's a byproduct of living in a world built on instant replies and rapid exchanges. But there's something deeper happening too. Our voices online often feel freer, more experimental. People type in lowercase to appear casual, exaggerate punctuation for emotion, or use memes and GIFs to communicate what words can't capture. And eventually, these habits change our expectations for how communication should feel in real life. Technology has also blurred the line between speech and writing. Voice notes, AI-generated transcripts, and even autocorrect are shaping the rhythm of how we talk. And let's not forget algorithms themselves are quietly influencing language, encouraging phrases and trends that fit neatly into the formats most likely to go viral. But despite all this, one truth remains constant: your voice is still yours. No matter how much technology shapes or accelerates communication, there's an underlying authenticity that belongs to you alone. And the question becomes, will you let technology dictate the way you express yourself, or will you use it as a tool to amplify your true voice? Because here's the surprising part: even in this digital age, the most powerful form of communication is still the same as it has always been: authentic human connection through words, tone, and presence. Now let's talk about something that's often overlooked: the connection between your voice and your future. Have you ever considered that the way you speak could directly influence your opportunities in life? The words you choose, the confidence in your tone, even the structure of your sentences can either open doors or quietly close them. Think about the people who walk into a room and instantly command attention. They don't need to shout. They don't need to dominate the conversation. With just a few words, their presence is felt. Why? Because their voice carries intention. It's not just about what they say, it's about how they say it. Meanwhile, others may speak a lot but struggle to leave an impression simply because their delivery lacks clarity or conviction. Here's the fascinating part: your brain listens to you just as much as others do. Every time you speak, you're not only influencing how people perceive you, you're shaping the way you perceive yourself. This ties into a psychological idea known as self-perception theory, which suggests that we form our identity based on our behaviors. That means if you speak like a confident person, your brain starts to believe you're a confident person. On the flip side, if you constantly downplay yourself with phrases like, "I'm not good at this," or "I can't handle it," your subconscious mind begins to treat those words as truth. Over time, they carve out a version of yourself that aligns with those limitations. But here's the good news: the opposite is also true. When you choose words that are strong, clear, and empowering, you're not just sending a message outward, you're reinforcing a new version of yourself inward. History is full of examples of leaders, entrepreneurs, and visionaries who use their speech not only to inspire others, but to transform themselves. They understood that communication was more than a skill, it was a tool for creating reality. So ask yourself this when you speak: are you reinforcing strength, clarity, and purpose? Or are you accidentally reinforcing hesitation and limitation? Because your voice is never neutral, it's always shaping something, either building you up or holding you back. And here's where it gets exciting. Once you become aware of this, you gain the ability to refine your voice with intention. You're no longer just speaking out of habit, you're speaking with purpose. And when you do that, you don't just change how others see you, you change how you see you. So how do you actually take control of your voice and begin shaping it into something that empowers you instead of limiting you? The answer lies in making small but deliberate adjustments, shifts in the way you choose words, the way you pace your sentences, and the way you frame your own identity through speech. Let's break it down into 3 practical steps. First, replace hesitant language with assertive language. Pay attention to how often you soften your statements with phrases like, "I think maybe," or "I'm not sure, but." While these words can sometimes make you sound polite overusing them, signals uncertainty even when you actually know what you're talking about. Try shifting from "I think this could work" to "this will work," because that simple change instantly transforms your presence. Second, slow down your pacing. Confident speakers never rush. They let their words land, giving listeners time to process. When you deliberately pause, you not only sound more thoughtful and composed, you actually gain control of the conversation. People naturally lean in when silence is used effectively. Think of those powerful moments in speeches where a pause carried more weight than a sentence ever could. Third, eliminate unnecessary self-deprecation. There's a big difference between humility and self-sabotage. Many people casually undermine themselves with comments like, "I'm terrible at this," or "I have no idea what I'm doing." While it may feel like harmless humor, your brain takes those words seriously, and so do the people around you. Instead of, "I'm bad at this," try saying, "I'm learning how to do this." Instead of, "I have no idea," say, "I'm figuring it out." See the difference? One reinforces weakness, the other reinforces growth. These 3 shifts might seem small, but they add up to something powerful. Bit by bit, they reshape not only how others perceive you, but how you perceive yourself. And that's the key, because your voice is both an outward signal and an inward mirror. Here's the ultimate takeaway: every time you speak, you're making a choice. You're either reinforcing confidence or reinforcing doubt. You're either building bridges or creating distance. You're either stepping into your potential or stepping away from it. So the next time you open your mouth to speak, pause for just a second and ask yourself, am I using my voice to weaken myself or to create the version of me I truly want to become? Way we speak. Because while vocabulary, pacing, and tone are powerful, they don't exist in isolation. They're shaped by the world around us, often in ways we barely notice. Take gender, for example. Research has found that women are often encouraged both subtly and openly to use softer or more tentative language phrases, like "I think" or "maybe we should try." Meanwhile, men are more likely to be rewarded for speaking in direct, assertive statements. This isn't necessarily about biology, it's about social conditioning, the invisible rules we absorb over time about how we're supposed to communicate. Status plays a role too. A politician will speak differently to the public than to their advisors. A doctor might use technical jargon with colleagues but simplify language when talking to patients. This ability to shift, known as code switching, is a sign of social intelligence. But it also raises a big question: if you're constantly shifting your voice to fit the audience, what does your true voice sound like underneath it all? And then there's community and class. Someone raised in an academic household filled with debate and discussion will likely have a very different communication style than someone from a working-class neighborhood where speech is more direct and fast-paced. Neither style is better. Both carry layers of history, experience, and perspective. The way you speak is in many ways a living record of where you've come from. Culture adds another dimension. In Western societies, directness is often seen as confidence. People are encouraged to speak their mind. But in many Eastern cultures, indirectness and subtlety are valued with silence, sometimes carrying more weight than words. What's left unsaid can be just as important as what's spoken. So here's the key takeaway: your voice is not just your own, It's a blend of family culture, society, and experience. Every phrase, every pattern you use carries traces of where you've been and what you've absorbed. But at the same time, there's an authentic core that belongs only to you. Beneath the conditioning and cultural influences, there's a voice that reflects who you truly are. The challenge is learning to recognize when you're speaking from that authentic place and when you're simply echoing the expectations of others. Because once you become aware of that difference, you gain the freedom to choose. Let's turn to one of the most fascinating aspects of communication. The way your words don't just reflect reality, they actively shape it. Every sentence you speak feeds back into your mind, reinforcing patterns of thought and belief. In other words, your speech is not just descriptive, it's creative. It builds the world you live in. Think about it this way. If you constantly tell yourself, "I'm not good at this," or "I always mess things up," you're programming your subconscious to accept those statements as truth. Over time, those words sculpt your identity, trapping you in a smaller version of yourself. But when you shift your language even slightly, you can begin to rewire the story you're telling about who you are. Psychologists call this self-perception theory. It suggests that we form beliefs about ourselves by observing our own behavior. And speech is one of the most visible, repeatable behaviors we have. If you speak like someone who is confident, decisive, and capable, your brain begins to believe you are that person. History offers countless examples of people who use language not only to inspire others, but to transform themselves. Leaders, innovators, and visionaries understood something simple yet profound. Words shape identity. The more intentional their speech became, the stronger their sense of self grew. So here's a practical way to apply this in your own life. Start paying attention to the small habits in your language. Replace limiting phrases like, "I can't," with "I'm figuring out how trade." "I don't know," for "I'm learning and shift." "This is impossible," into "This is a challenge I can overcome." These adjustments may feel minor, but they're powerful. They transform speech from something automatic into something intentional. And once you start speaking with intention, you start living with intention. Remember, your voice is not neutral. Every word is either building confidence or eroding it. Every phrase is either opening possibilities or shutting them down. Every sentence is either creating momentum or keeping you stuck. So the next time you speak, ask yourself, am I reinforcing the version of myself I want to grow into, or the version I want to leave behind? Because ultimately, your words don't just describe who you are, they decide who you become. Here's the final and most powerful realization. Your voice is not just a way to communicate, it's a way to create. Every time you speak, you're reinforcing a version of yourself. You're either strengthening confidence or weakening it, opening doors or closing them, building connection or creating distance. The truth is, your brain listens to your words just as much as the people around you do. That's why intentional speech is so transformative. When you consciously choose to speak with clarity, confidence, and purpose, you begin shaping not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. Over time, those choices build momentum, carving out a stronger, more resilient identity. Think about the people who inspire you most. Whether they're leaders, creators, or everyday individuals who radiate presence, what sets them apart isn't just what they say, it's the intention behind their words, the way they align their speech with who they want to be. And the same power is available to you. So let me leave you with this challenge. Start listening, really listening to yourself. Notice the patterns in your words, your tone, your rhythm. Ask yourself, what story is my speech telling about me? If it's a story of hesitation, self-doubt, or limitation, you have the power to rewrite it. If it's a story of strength, clarity, and vision, then keep reinforcing it until it becomes unshakable. Because here's the ultimate truth: change your speech and you change your perception. Change your perception and you change your reality. And when you change your reality, you change your life. So now that you know the power your voice holds, the only question left is, how will you use it?